Not really part of it.
Thank you, councillors, and in open meeting, I just need to note that Councillor Ford says that you could be a little bit late. We'll start the meeting and he'll so welcome everyone to this our April meeting. Webcasting of the meeting. The meeting will be recorded and placed on the council's website for the purpose of broadening knowledge and participation in council issues and demonstrating council's commitment to openness and accountability. All speakers must ensure their comments are relevant to the issue at hand and to refrain from making personal comments or criticism or mentioning any private information. No other persons are permitted to record the meeting unless specifically authorised by council to do so. I open prayer. We give thanks for the contribution by pioneers, early settlers, for those who fought in the various wars for the fabric of Tenterville community we have today. May the words of our mouths and the meditation of our hearts be accepted in thy sight, O Lord. Amen. Acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge traditional custodians of this land that we're meeting on today. I'd also like to pay respect to elders past, present and emerging of the Yucca, Kamilaroi and Bunjalung nations and extend that respect to other Aboriginal people present. No apologies, councillors. Disclosures and declarations of interest. Is there any disclosures or declarations of interest, councillors?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No?
Sorry.
I'll go first, councillor. I'll let you go.
Of course you
Councillor,
can.
you have one?
You are the chair after all.
Yes, councillor.
Yeah, I just want to submit something here to.
Well, I'll do that, councillor, and we'll deal with that. We'll table the documents.
Okay.
Okay?
Right.
So declaration of interest is to do with myself. It's to do with EC 09/21, so Road Asset Management Plan, where Ross's Road, Ross Road is mentioned. This report, my daughter and son-in-law live on the road, and with my two granddaughters, there's no financial gain to myself. I have nothing to do with directing staff or drafting the report, and it'll be less than significant non-pecuniary. I've removed in a second to accept the preceding. Councillor Soy, second, please. Councillor Berry, thank you. All in favour? Against carried. Confirmation, councillors, with item to do with the our last meeting held in March. With someone who was in attendance at that meeting, like to move it, that is a true and correct record of that meeting. Councillor Bob Rogan, thank you. Second, please. Councillor Mike Baker, thank you. All in favour? Again, carried. Waiving your documents, Councillor Murray, you've indicated you have some at the table.
What can't table will become the challenges with the documents that are on the table is the private and confidentiality. So the private and confidential notice on the top, so that it's tabled that we can.
Councillor, did you hear acting CEO?
No.
Yeah, it says private and confidential on the top. If you want to table it using this particular process, it will become public. You could, with the leeway of the meeting, perhaps have ask to have it in a confidential session to discuss that should you wish. But if you table the document, it will become a public document.
It's a public
You're
document.
happy with
You
that?
happy with that, Councillor?
Yeah.
Yep, no worries. So we'll
Okay.
check that. So you can table that, and it's in relation to item GOV 32/21. So at that point in time, we'll provide
So thank you, Councillor, and yes, as chair of the meeting, I do accept that there's been tabled, but it has been tabled in the public part of the meeting. Okay. Urgent late supplementary items of business, councillors, none? We don't have any community consultation and there is no mayoral minutes, so we'll walk straight into our agenda. So we now, in your hard copy agenda, councillors, you all should have one, go to page 21. It's item COM 9/20, Centre War Memorial Park Master Plan for Public Exhibition. Guys, I'm moving the second to deal with this item, please. Councillor Berry, I thank you. Second by Councillor Murray, I thank you. And I'll hand over to Mr. Paul Della, and very well dressed, Mr. Paul Della. And welcome, Paul, as always, to present the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Note that the recommendation is to make submissions that were received. There were 4 submissions received on the draft master plan for the Wollongong Bars. And recommendation 2 is that any decision be deferred on that master plan until further investigation of alternative, more affordable options are completed. 4 submissions were received during the consultation period, and so others were received outside of that period of time. The feedback suggested that the proposal would be between a terrific facility, very inviting attraction to Tenterfield. However, the preference is for a cheaper alternative option. And feedback from the councillors at a workshop that we held where the submissions were presented was perhaps we should get some further information from Kindra given that they had a new pool installed there at a significantly lower cost than what was proposed in our master plan part. And also it's also suggested that the current site limits opportunities for development, and perhaps a greenfield site can be looked at, and also the possibility of shifting where the pools are raised. So, so the recommendation there is that we explore some further options, and we'll also arrange further consultation sessions with relevant stakeholders once that additional information has been obtained. So that's the recommendation.
Thank you, Paul. Before the councillors, I apologise, before I go to the questions to Paul to do with this report, I'll go back to the order of business. We do not have any items to be considered in confidential session, so I apologise, I've stepped over that. Any questions to Paul to do with this report, councillors? Councillor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, quick question to Paul regarding the hydro therapy pool. I'm Mr. Durham was saying I go to Toowoomba, I was going to Toowoomba, I chucked me out, I had to go to the house to get my leg fixed. There was a hydrotherapy pool there. I questioned them about the water quality, and they said it's got to be monitored very, very carefully and depending on the number of people who go in and the thing, and if I've got any problems, open wounds and all that sort of stuff, it's a non-goer. So I don't think that our town will require that. But anyway, that's only my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Once again, that can be further discussed as we hold further consultation.
Other questions to Paul to do with the report, councillors? If not, the reports there, councillors. All happy to note the submissions that were received. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Councillors, move on to page 31, your hard copy. Item COM 10/21. Councillor Bike Plan Review. Move and second to deal with this item, please. Councillor Bronwyn, thank you. Second, please. Councillor Bob Rogan, thank you. Once again, with this one, I'll hand over to, once again, the very well dressed Mr. David Council. Welcome, Dave. A few gigs on the agenda this morning, but welcome.
Councillors, we have the Tenterfield Bike Plan, which last year we considered, we put it on public exhibition for the submissions. We did receive a couple of submissions there suggesting some sculptures, reusing some old bikes, so sculptures along the path, which is quite commendable. It doesn't actually form a direct part of the bike plan though, it's actually part of the infrastructure for the cycleway. So it certainly can be considered with our open parks and gardens, preserves, and other features along the parkway. The other suggestions were that we link to some future tracks such as off-road mountain bike tracks, or also a pathway around the water supply there. So those features are still in design and still being determined. We haven't actually included any links to those until such time as we have details that we can actually show where they're going to exit link to. So, yeah, we present the updated bike plan at any stage in time, the next couple of years when we do get those details of any other linkages, we can certainly review it again and add those as the budget allows.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions today to do with the report, councillors? Councillor Berry, you indicated?
Second dot point, help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And the fifth dot point, reduce road congestion. I'm just wondering how much road congestion that would alleviate in Peterfield, if any. And the reducing greenhouse gas, I don't think that should be in there, it's a lot of garbage.
Thank you, councillor. They have a more generic, the plan is based on a more generic statewide document that's guidelines coming out of the Transport New South Wales and the old RMS. I guess in principle, the encouragement of cyclists and people to use cyclists will reduce vehicle use. So that's our little bit of, even though it's only a minor input, that's our little bit of contribution towards reducing car emissions. The other thing is the congestion. I guess if we don't have cycleways, cyclists have to ride on the traffic lanes. So if they're on the traffic lanes, they're going to slow other vehicles down. So it just accumulates vehicles behind them. So by providing particularly the off-road cycleways, if we can provide those, we can also provide the safety of cyclists, but also allow the through traffic, the heavy vehicles, trucks, delivery buses, school buses, they are able to travel at their normal speed and not get held up by one cyclist. So it's certainly noted it's only a very small contribution, but it is a slight contribution to the benefit of overall transport network.
Thanks, Dave. Councillor Bob, and then go to you, Councillor McTish.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you, to David. Just looking at the red on the map, on the red indication, which I think said is, there doesn't seem to be a proposal, it sort of cuts off, the map's not totally clear, but it looks like probably Clifton Street or somewhere. Wouldn't it be easy just, and I think appropriate, even without the plans for any recreational area around the dam, to have that just extended out to say Aldebaran Park or something?
Thank you, council. We certainly would. That's the original plan that was in the original bike plan. We certainly would look to extend it. If it comes to the detail of around the dam, once we know the detail of exactly where the linkages on a Buren Park, or if it's there's other possibilities of linkages through Saddlers Estate. So we've got a park and reserve there, so it'd be ideal to that's a growth area and has future development possibility. So it'd be ideal to include that as well. Once we know the actual detail, we're still working on any of the concept plans for around the water supply there. Certainly, we've got to include that. I understand we're not looking at any future proposal for the dam as just being a once-off park. We're looking to provide other infrastructure, exercise facilities, those sorts of things, and certainly the linkage to Saddlers Estate Park as well. So yeah, we certainly include those. Once we know those exact details where the park's going to actually go. The plan, the marked red lines, they really reflect what our current action plan is. So in the last table, we have the action plan. You'll notice there's a slight little missing section there in Mole Street. So that's one of the shoulders that we still have to complete. There's a missing link there. And then we also have the bit in Scott Street where we have to rectify the shoulders there to make the existing ones. I guess what the aim of a lot of our infrastructure work at the moment is to try and maintain our existing network before we go too far ahead building new stuff. But we certainly have got those other plans for linkages around the dam on the card mentioned.
Okay,
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Councillor Nick, you've indicated.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dave, just I commend you on a good report, but my issue again is the costing of it all. Like, if any one of us here wanted to do something at our house, under the cement, a couple hundred metres, it would cost nowhere near 30,000. How do you get this figure $150 a metre? Is there way you organise that, or is that just not obviously guesswork, but it seems like an awful lot of money to put a bit of boxing, a bit of mesh and cover it with cement.
Yeah, thank you, councillor. It's a quite a good point because one of the things we've allowed for in this in these plans, a number of these plans, is what our worst case scenario might be. The last thing we want to do is put up a budget item because this is what we then source for our future budgeting purposes. We then go and put it in the budget, and the last thing we find is we've got cost overruns. So we tend to make sure we cover the higher end of the rate. The other issue though is with any of these works like pathways, if we were building the full road in concrete, if we're doing the full road, we get the efficiencies and economies of doing a larger area. But by doing these smaller sections, we still have to, when we're doing the work, we still have to have overheads like traffic control. We have to have the same establishment costs as if we were doing the full width of the road. And really it is a bit of a pain because for a small bit of work on the side of the road, we still have to set up traffic control signs all around the corners, everything. So where possible, we certainly try to reduce them. I'd like to see them halved in actual work in the field. What we tend to try and do is if we can try to, with both this and pathways, if we can try to link in a number of small items. So if we've got 2 or 3 small items or sections around the town to do, if we can try to link them all in together and do one establishment rather than coming and doing one month and then back again a couple of months later. So that's where we've got possibility to reduce those figures.
Okay, so that's the high end.
It's certainly aimed at being high end so that we cover, so we don't have to then come back and ask for more money. We want to make sure we aim for the high end of what the expectation might be.
Thanks, Dave.
Good question, councillor, and a very well explained report. It's good for us all to know that, because we do look at that. That's a good question. Any other questions today to do with the report, councillors? If not, the report said councillors all happy to note. In favour, against, carried. Councillors will move to page 34 in your hard copy. It's item COM 1121, pedestrian access mobility plan review. Move to second here, please. Councillor Murray, thank you. Second, please. Councillor Berry, thank you. Once again, I'll hand over to Dave to present the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The pedestrian access mobility plan, again, a similar format to the bike plan. It provides a guiding tool for us for development of pathways and linkages across streets in urban areas. What it aims though is to make sure we have access for mobility for the less able people as well. It's not just about cycles this one, it's actually about footpaths, but also making sure people can alight off the footpath onto the roadway, across the roadway. So we do that through pram ramps, so that there's kind of steps so that people don't fall when they're crossing the road. Just to make sure there's that accessibility from the road, from one path to another, and then just we've expanded to find their own way across the road. So we have a number of areas there where we have shortcomings, and that this plan aims to try and tidy those up so that we have connectivity for the less mobile. Some people are in walkers, they might be in wheelchairs or motorised scooters, so we need to sort of keep our mind open to all the road users, not only just those in cars and bicycles. We have also included, however, we have in the submissions here last year, we did have some suggestions for putting some additional work out in the villages. So the recommendation there suggests that we undertake some additional works or plan some additional works for the Great Village to renew the existing pathway along Bruxton Way between Allison Street and Plumbago Bridge. That's basically, that section is the main part of Drake Village, past the park and the RTC. Then a second section to construct a pathway in Drake Village from along the Bruxton Highway from the Plumbago Bridge out to Timbarra Street, which is the street leading down to the cemetery. Now that section has isolated where there's no real footpath or shoulder for people to walk on. Because of the terrain of the roadside and the verge, people are basically having to walk on the edge of the national highway or the state highway. So we've got some safety concerns there that we'd like to probably include and see if we can do anything there. Urbanville Village is to renew the existing footpath that we have, which is in a reasonably poor condition, along Bury Street between Urban Street and Burmai Street, so that's the one that goes up to the hospital. We also have the Urbanville Village to construct a new pathway between, along Urban Street between Bury and Tulum, so that's heading to the southwest out along Tulum Road. To cater for the residents down there, there's a residential population as well as a school. The last one is to include a path in Liston Village along the side of Mount Lindsay. So they're sort of plans that are still in concept stage. They just be mentioned here so that at least we can work on them under the scope of the plan. And if we are able to obtain some grant funding, which is where we see a lot of these works, we don't have the money ourselves to throw up these projects. But certainly this plan and including these items in these plans gives us the possibility to seek grant funding to improve the villages as well as the items listed in the actual plan.
Questions today to do with the board, councillors? I'll go to you, councillor Bob Wright, and to you, councillor Perry.
Thanks, through you, Mr. Mayor. David, just out of interest, there's a couple of comments here about, you know, the funds not being available right now and all that sort of thing, and we understand that from the budget. But you talk about the maintenance burden, the use of long life materials. Is there anything on the radar reference recycle rubberized type, bitumized type pavement use? Because I've walked on some of that stuff in other places. Seems quite good. I don't know about its longevity, so I'm just wondering how much you know about that and whether it's considered or not.
Thank you, councillor. It's a very important question that we have got in our mind. We do, there is the technology out there where there is recycling being done with road materials in the road pavements. Unfortunately, one of the things is we are fairly remote from the major source and the major recyclers that can actually produce the product in a size that's suitable for incorporating. Having said that, though, we have recently only this year undertaken a little trial section of some bitumen resealing. It's actually the first section on Castlereagh Road, where we did some work there where we've actually got crushed glass, so the old bottles, recycling of bottles. So we've actually used that because basically a lot of these products, the glass, once it's broken down finely enough, it becomes an inert filler, the same as aggregates. So as long as they don't deteriorate and weaken the road surface. So we have a trial of the section there. There is the opportunity to use that similar technology in asphalts. That's quite common practice, particularly in Melbourne and Sydney, to be using glasses and crushed bricks, that sort of thing, as filler into asphalt. So if we did some asphalt foot paving, again, it comes back to the economies of scale as council just raised on. If we're going to try and do these on a small section, obviously the cost will go up because it's extremely high to bring it from the larger major metropolitan centres stuff to do a small bit of work. But certainly if we had, for example, the halfway around the dam, if we had a large scope project, it's not worth it. Setting up a small plant to add in fillers like that. And the other thing we do is, so with bitumen reseal, we're actually using product at the moment that has crushed tyres, basic car tyres crushed down and built. So we're only in a small way, yes, but we are trying to look at things like that. So certainly if there's opportunity down the track to say use recycled concrete crushed up, even not as the final layer, but as a sub-base, as a foundation layer for footpaths and that sort of thing. The Drake Village, where we're proposing to include a section that goes out of town, that might be an opportunity there where we're not right outside somebody's front door. There may be opportunity.
It was the proposed future one at Drake that I had in mind when I asked the question. So yeah, thanks for that. Thanks.
Councillor Berry, you have a question to do with the report?
Yeah, with the Liston pathway along the Mount Lindsay Road, I know the owner's done a fair bit there, but we've had a woman slip over there and got gravel and found in her knee and she had to go to hospital to get it removed. I'm just wondering if we can push that up the order, second order as far as we can. And what did we actually have in mind in Liston? Is it just going to be a concept plan, or are we going to go to the public and ask them what they want? And yeah, okay, just if you answer that one, Dave, I'll come back.
Yeah, no, thank you. At this stage, we're just looking to do a concept plan. We haven't got set plans to go and actually construct anything right this moment. our plan is to get a concept plan in place, discuss it with the public, the public meetings where we can have that. There's some other issues we'd like to work in with that plan too, not just a cycle plan. There's some issues with tidying up the parking at the park. You know, we want to, again, we want to try and combine these things together so that if we have to do something with the parking area at the park, do it while we're doing the footpath, that sort of thing. So we'll have that concept plan prepared, discuss that with the meeting, and then we'll see if we can, council can either allocate some funds to it, or we can chase some grant funding, or it might be a 50-50 promotion.
Thanks, Dave. I'll come to Councillor Brown. Councillor Sawyer, you've indicated.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Through you today, on page 27, the High Street, with the Rouse Street being the cross, uneven old concrete replace. I'm hoping that when we replace the concrete, we'll retain the original stone curb and gutter.
Thank you, councillor. We aim to retain the old curb. We have a policy on the old stone to try and maintain that. That does come at a cost, but it's one of those things that I think it's beneficial.
Heritage comes at a cost.
Certainly, yes, it's worthwhile to put that extra cost into retaining the heritage, because once it's gone, it's gone. So our policy is to retain the old granite curbs where possible, and that policy has been retained. We're actually including it in the revised road act, the red.
Thanks, Councillor. Thanks, Dave. Councillor Brown, you've indicated questions to the report.
Yeah, no, I just want to comment that the second one, the Drake Village, the new pathway from along the highway from the Creek Bridge up to Timbarra Street, Road Street. How vital that is, because people at the moment, a lot of kids, a lot of elderly people have no choice but to walk on the footpath, on the bitumen. I mean, there's no other thing, and it's incredibly dangerous. So, and with regard to the heritage, you're chasing all of the heritage pavers and the blocks that form the gutter outside the council office here, you'll find them at the sewage dump. Because they removed them all and took them all out and put them in some wall.
Well, I hope that with, as Dave's replied to Councillor Sawyer's question, Councillor, that it is a major thing that we'll be looking after and at a cost. So, thank you. Any other questions to report, councillors? Councillor Tom?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. A quick question today. Is there a marked pedestrian crossing anywhere across the highway down at Drake?
I think the council on that, there isn't a marked pedestrian crossing, and that helpfully leads me to a question. I'm going to comment on the Drake part too. The Drake Township, we're actually working similar to the Liston area. We're working on a concept plan for the Drake Village. We have the village plan, we have the village concept, but we're also looking at, in conjunction with Transport for New South Wales, we're looking at a concept plan for this pathway, as well as tidying up how those pathways will link to crossing the road and intersection improvement there at Allison Street. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do, is get that concept plan going so that we actually identify how it all links together, and we'll continue then down to the other pathways down.
And just to share with the councillors through a roads and traffic committee meeting with our roads and traffic New South Wales representative, Dave and News have already had a meeting down there with the RMS to share with the meeting, and that's a really good thing, because that, if there's any way that we can jag a bit of funding through them to be supportive of what we're trying to do and work together, just to share with the councillors, that's basically where it's at. It's at a starting point. They've had a gathering down there, look at what they want to do. And it's with the bus stop and everything, to marry it all in, do it all together while we're there.
Probably can add just further,
It's question, councillor,
for the pedestrian crossing, it's probably unlikely that it would warrant a pedestrian crossing, a marked pedestrian crossing, because of traffic volumes and pedestrian volumes. There is also an inherent danger that people assume they can step out into a pedestrian crossing, tell and hope that somebody will stop. What we're looking to do in that concept plan is put blisters and a crossing point, so that they can still cross the road normal, but they're given added protection as they step up to the road to cross. So that's the whole part of that whole discussion with Transport for New South Wales.
Bit of a calming area, councillor Tom. But so there's nothing to be great. Before we move on, sorry, Paul, you would wish?
Yeah, 3 years, just to know what we're talking about this topic, $100,000 has been included in the draft budget for the past for next year.
Thanks, Paul. I just wanted one councillor to bring your attention to, in this report before we pass it, on page 35, to do with the asset management number 4. And these are things we always need to know, but while that's a really good report, and those plans are there, but just remember, there are no funds for major works fund. You know, we need to be aware of that, and we need to work with our staff and our state and federal government to source that funding to going forward to get these jobs done. The reports our councillors all happy to receive a note. Yes, carried. Page 37, item EC 09/21 road asset management plan 221. Go and move in a second here, please. Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Second by Councillor Michael Bakery, and I thank you. And once again, I'll hand over today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, last year we put our road, what was the road network plan out on public display. The seeking submissions. What we have done in that council report last year, we made the decision to change the name to the road asset management plan to be consistent with our other asset plans, the stormwater plans, we did receive some submissions, and without reading right through the report there, Sherritt Road in Torrington, which we're already doing some work, Demon Creek Road, which can be investigated. However, there are some issues with road reserves along with some of our other roads, so we have to have that as an ongoing investigation. Miller's Lane, which we've already granted some money to have put on there, so that will be already being addressed. Sugarbag Road down near Drake, we have had some submissions to seek construction of a brand new road linking the east-west section down there, but we do not have any funds at the moment to allocate towards that. Leach's Gully Road, so there's some comments there towards management of road verges with weeds and mowing, which is really an operational matter that we include anyhow. We would take into account the mowing of verges. It's certainly something where if we can apply extra funding to with our general operations, we would like to put more effort into road verges, controlling weeds and clearing dangerous trees. But again, that's the cost benefit of what we can do on the road. We've got limited funds to spend on the actual road surface, so it tends to get a bit more priority. Roos's Road there, we have comments there regarding the condition of Roos's Road, which again is more or less an operational matter to continue maintenance and keep up standard. Tourist Route 9, we've got Gum Flat and Mackenzie Lookout. There were suggestions there of the overall tourist route to see some upgrading there for the benefit of tourists coming to the area, and then therefore the flow-on effect, the benefits that come to the community in general and the businesses, which certainly is very commendable. We have got some funding already, so we've been very successful in obtaining some funding to do the upgrading of Phildare Road to actually put a bitumen seal on it. So I think in view of tourism, that would certainly be large encouragement for tourists to cross there if they don't have to travel on gravel roads, and we can make it safer. We are looking to do, we have actually submitted further grant applications, which we're yet to hear back from, but we have put in for more work to do actually up on the Lookout Road up to Mount Mackenzie, and to hopefully upgrade some of the facilities up there, and that would address some of the issues raised in the submission. So improve parking to allow a better area for coaches to turn around and encourage more people to get up there and have a look at the view. And the more people that have a pleasant experience by driving up there and parking and having good facilities, hopefully the word will get about to come to Tenterfield more often. Wellington Lookout Road, we've had some submissions out there seeking to have it's almost a kilometre of the last section to have that included on our plan. It has been an ongoing matter that the council has considered a few times with submissions over recent years. So we're looking to include that because of the number of residents that are out there. Include that on the plan. Talmoy Road is a similar case where we've had submissions to extend our maintenance on Talmoy Road. It's a fairly low maintenance road once it's put into shape because of its nature of being on the country off on the range. It's not like it's in low-lying flat country. It would, we've got an extension there that would take it as far as where we can actually apply on a public road as it basically runs out after that, so we can't go any further, but we would address the residents that live up there. Merrily Cullenville Road, council has had some recent activity discussing Merrily Cullenville Road, which we'd like to assure and see that it remains open. So as part of our road network, road asset plan, apologies, we would include that in the plan. And Reed Street is a short street that is out to the east of the town. It was actually constructed under a development application, so it's a bitumen sealed road, but it lies in the rural area. We would include that on our updated register as well, because it's now dedicated to council and under council's maintenance. So that's a summary of the actual submissions that were received. The actual plan itself, we have discussed the plan itself. It does have some impact to some of the residents. There are some roads where we are looking to perhaps lessen the speed and include E-class roads, the old E-class roads. It certainly doesn't mean that we won't ever touch their road again. It puts it back more on a risk basis so that we hopefully can extend the maintenance. If the road's not in need of it, we just don't go and grade it because the time's up. There are a number of situations where that is used against council, that if we have it in our plan that we grade it, say every 12 months, then if we're not there in 12 months, that becomes the issue rather than the actual standard of the road. We need to try and reduce our operational costs. So that's why we've included the E-class roads. Some of these roads are actually glorified driveways to one house. Some of them, certainly it's a topical issue, some of them go to 3 or 4 houses. So that's where we've included the list of roads and added in the E-class roads. We've also, at the suggestion of council, which is quite wise, the old plan had the list of roads as appendices that weren't actually within the document, so you had to go looking for them as a separate item. What we've done is added those tables into the actual main document, so it's just all one document, so that's another slight change. In the rural road register, just to finish off, we've, as I say, we've put in the E-class roads there. I've highlighted the ones that we would consider at this stage, but certainly that, as I say, that could be topical for some people. So the suggestion of the report is that we place the plan back out on public display again for another 28 days, and after that, if there's no further submissions received, council then adopt the plan.
Thanks, Dave. Councillors, questions to Dave to do the report. Councillor McNish, and I'll go to you, Councillor Berry. Councillor Brockman, you've indicated. Thank you.
Just a couple, with Wellington Lookout Road, you said you're looking to it. What do you mean by that? Is the road going to be extended up to those 2 people's places, or?
Thank you, councillor. We've actually included it in the table, so I think in the you should see it there. Lookout Road. So on page 61 of the actual plan of the road asset management plan, towards the bottom there, I've included it as an E-class road. Okay. Same with Calmoy Road. We've included that, so they've been included there, and that they'll go out to public display, so they're already adopted in the plan, unless council wishes to take them off.
No, thanks, Dave. And the second one was Sugarbag Road. Part of the reason that they want that joined up with what's the place?
Sugarbag East and Sugarbag West.
Yes, for safety during the fires. Yeah. That was one of the few ways access last year of being able to get back into Drake. So I think that maybe needs a bit more of a push to get that road home there, because it is a safety issue. You're aware of that, obviously.
Yeah, certainly take the point, councillor, and I think council has received a submission last year. There was a petition put to council. I think, if I recall rightly, the council resolution was to consider it as part of the submissions to this plan. At this stage, we haven't looked to include it as a road. It certainly would have that benefit of serving as an alternative access or exit, but it doesn't actually benefit any specific resident. There's no residents along that road. Actually, council is the owner of the land. We have quite a parcel of land with the road reserve going through the middle of it. some of the issues though in that are that the existing road or track isn't actually on the right road alignment. It deviates quite from where the actual road is. At the moment, we're protected in that as council land, I guess. But to put it actually on the line to reconstruct the road would be quite significant at a capital cost because of the terrain there. We could certainly look at it, we could certainly cost that. But at this stage, we haven't included it because it doesn't actually give anybody a specific benefit where they can't get access to the property now.
And it's more the safety aspect, during fires, I was concerned about.
But certainly, you're right, it would have those benefits of not only for the residents as an escape route, but also for fire services, additional water supplies and to save time. That, I guess that's a balancing act we would have to weigh up in another, probably in another report. The benefits of that and the cost of constructing it and maintaining it. I think it's about a kilometre long.
Yeah, it's a bit contentious because a lot of people there don't want it.
True, and that's the balancing act that we have with this. And with a lot of our work, we're actually having a program where we're upgrading some of our roads to bitumen from gravel to try and improve the safety and maintain, reduce maintenance costs. But there's some people that don't want bitumen roads because it encourages people to drive on the road and look. So I guess that's the balancing act as councillors and staff we have.
You want to please them all, Dave? Councillor McGish, before we go to Councillor, very good topic you brought up, and with that safety issue to be provide better access for emergency services in those times, it's a good argument going forward. You have to pursue funding, you know, with ministers and stuff like that. So it is a good topic. So it is, and I'm fully aware of the objectives and the people who want it to be, but you won't please them all. Councillor Berry, you've indicated. Question to the report.
Yeah. With these E-class roads, Dave, at the Road to National Congress when we had in Toowoomba, they spoke about the first kilometre being from the farm gate on. That's where your produce leaves the farm, it doesn't leave the town. So if you haven't got a properly constructed road going to the farm gate, and that farm closes and so on, it gets a snowballing effect. Now, going back 60 years, I was friends with the engineer. I actually had a partnership with him on a couple of issues on the Stanthorpe Shire. He took that attitude that we've got to bitumen all the horticultural roads first, which was necessary around Stanthorpe because that's what it was. Stanthorpe went from same size as Tenterfield, about tripled in population to Tenterfield, now the district I'm talking about, not the Shire. Basically, because of the stuff Jack Armstrong did back in the 60s, he bitumened every possible road he could. There was a few D-class roads, and here we're going backwards by putting in E-class roads. I think we should scrap that idea altogether and simply go with a D-class road and keep it that. Now, they spoke at length on this first kilometre of road at this Road to National Congress, and I think that's very important because if you can't get produce out of your place, you're literally closing down. Now, I know with cattle it's slightly different to horticultural produce, but it's not that much different. If you've got to walk cattle out, you might get to once a year, that's fine. Still not look at for any special potential investors. So I think we've got to scrap that idea altogether. Now, we've got Cullendoy here down here as a B-class road, and Sugarloaf Road, I think, is a B-class road as well. Cullendoy in particular on the Queensland side is a road of regional significance. We should be aiming to get that to an A-class road, which is a state road, if I'm not mistaken, that right? So I think that's one thing we should be looking at. And well, let's extend Sugarloaf because it's right to the border. Now ours is going to be Dixon too, but it's still a road of significance on the other side of the border. So I think we've got to match either side of the border. Good luck. That's if you have to do that.
Wherever the funding can come from, councillor.
Now, before I go in for a report, Councillor Berry, and as a councillor to all councillors, in this next 28-day period, you're quite entitled as council to put submission in. Or any of the people residents up there that feel the same view as you. They are, and no issues with the comments, more comments than questions, but Dave, did you have a reply?
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, councillor, they're very good comments, and that's the balancing act of the asset management plan. That there's a lot of extremes in the road. I guess everybody would like really their road to be an A-class road. They'd like to have 2 lanes for safety. A lot of the B-class roads, as you mentioned, Cullinan Road, they're B-class roads because they have a school bus. And I don't think anybody would refute that we'd like to have 2-lane roads that are bitumen sealed for any school bus. But it's just not practical for us to fund it. Even the state government couldn't fund that, I don't think. I would just, if I could just briefly touch back to Councillor Nish with Sugar Bag Road. I just wanted to mention to councillors, just to make sure you're aware, that Sugar Bag Road hasn't been included in this plan, so we haven't actually included it. If we wanted it to be assessed, that would have to be a separate action. Maybe that could be a submission to the review again.
Good advice, Dave.
The councillor, the first mile outside the farm gate, certainly for particularly for horticultural sheds and for vegetables, that sort of thing. Just having the road sealed just adds flow-on benefits that don't have dust coating the produce. There's just benefits there for the start. So there's a lot and accessibility for heavy vehicles. If they can't get heavy vehicles in, stock producers as well, they'll lose out because they can't get the carriers in to get the stock out. So there's a lot of benefits in maintaining the D class and looking to upgrade other classes. I guess not a lot of the submissions that we received, and understandably so, have talked about lowering the standard. Everybody has raised the issue about maintaining a high standard. And the basic problem is that we are not sustainable at that level of service. If we can find ways of funding it, we would love to maintain this existing level and look to increase it. We have to be able to fund it though. In the short term, without massive grant funding, we simply can't sustain that across the whole network. We're probably benefiting by the fact that some roads just don't get anywhere near the level of service they should be getting.
Councillor, before we go in, just a comment, and it revolves around your, comments, Councillor Berry, and questions. I feel that council and have been doing as good a job as we can at this stage to be supportive of industry, especially in the horticultural area. All the work that we're doing on that, and even Hoopers Road down there to be supportive of the Blueberry Farm. And as a council, we need to be supportive of our staff and the continued efforts they make to apply for funding, as they do all the time, to be supportive of those areas. While we've got, and accepting of development, be it industry or people living, then we need to provide the infrastructure in increased all time. That's our challenge, and it won't go away. It'll get harder to do. So we'll get there. Councillor Bronwyn.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Dave, you said the E-class roads are really nothing more than glorified driveways to 3 or 4 houses, but if you look on page 15, E-class is supposed to be non-through roads providing access to up to 2 properties without full-time residences, so not any houses at all. I, like Councillor Berry, very concerned at the idea of introducing an E-class or blowing out the grading times, and I really thank you for putting that appendix in, because a lot of us tried and we simply couldn't find it on the website, so we didn't actually know what roads were going to be downgraded or whatever. I've got a concern with the appendix though. If you look at, for instance, Matheson's Road, it's got 3 to 4 owners, yet it's listed as an E-class road. And if you look at 2 others in the nearby vicinity that do only have 2 owners, they're D-class roads. If you look at the Upper Rocky, it's listed as a D-class road, but it's actually got 17 separate owners, so therefore it should be a C-class road. So I'm just very wary of how the roads are being classified. And I would have also thought, with all the bitumen that we've been successful through the grant funding, we've got new 104 kilometres just in recent grants, let alone the Mount Lindsay and the list of the Wollongong Lagoon Road, which would therefore ease some of the pressure on our graders. So I think, you know, a 3-year interval on D-class roads, I don't understand why with better machines, we're getting less frequency in grading than we used to have. And it's just increasing the cost of the vehicles, you know, shaking the bits, the tyres, etc., just along the submission for the Ross Road submission about these are prime producers and they need to have a level of service. So, yeah, I'm pleased it's going to go out with the fence, but I just can't agree with a lot of the stuff in it. Thank you.
So thank you, councillor, and I agree that it is difficult with some of them to get that balance of which one should be a D class, which one should be an E class. The table there, the appendix for the roads identifies the roads by their segments. So we have in our network segments of roads. What we've tried to do is break them up where it's applicable, but the problem is with some of our segments, it covers kilometres of road. They're not just, you know, they don't sort of stop and change everybody's driveway. So some of those segments will have multiple properties and some of them will have one. We have to reinvent the whole asset plan. We have to go and break up the entire road network plan to actually identify where people's property ends. One of the other issues we have with that is that as soon as somebody builds a house or moves away from the house, it changes the whole scenario. You know, we've actually then change it again. More than happy, and that's why I've highlighted all of the ones that were suggested as D class. More than happy for us to receive submissions. If council or the public want to identify and council then want to adopt it, we can change it. We can change any one. If council deems that one of them has to be a D class for certain reasons, we can look at that. I guess the aim is to identify that, as we said, the glorified driveways. There are some out there that really do serve one house, and in some cases it might be a property that's not occupied all the time. That's where we're trying to get that balance of those ones that really don't need regular maintenance. And there are some roads out there that are almost grassed over them in the shape of them. And if the shape's right, they can exist in grass, you know, for the odd times that people drive down there. Not everybody drives out every day too, they work on the property. So it is difficult to accept that. It's that balancing act of where we start and where we finish. But there may be some that council as a group, as a body, want to say, oh, we'd like this one to remain as a D class. That's something that we can certainly accept.
Good advice, Dave. But is any more councillors, any more questions today to do with the report? If not, reports there, councillors, all in favour? Against? Carried. Councillors, we move on to page 44 in your hard copy. It's item AC 010/20, Timber Road Limits Review. Moving a second here, please. Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Second by Councillor Tom Peters. I thank you. And Dave will trot you out again. You rub me, I'm soon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Timber Bridge load limits. Councillors, it was just timely to review our Timber Bridge load limits. 2 years ago, we actually considered a report on our timber bridges, and with some of them, we actually resolved not to apply further load limits. You'll recall in the report mentions there that we initially had about 14 bridges we had tested. We had to actually apply some load limits out there on timber structures. Some of them had actually failed before we got to them. We then considered a further report that studied all of our remaining timber bridges, and we found that there were some concerns there. Page 2 of the report, you can see there's the list of the initial 14 bridges that were load limited, but then also the further secondary bridge that we considered. It's now 24 months since we considered that report, and the report did refer to a review in 24 months' time. What I've added there is an action. The last column gives an action that with the successful funding, we've been very successful in funding by both the state and federal governments. I'm very appreciative of that. We've been able to use through the bridges replacement program, the interim timber bridge renewal work we had. We've been able to spread that work far across the whole Shire, and that gives you a bit of an indication of what we've actually done with some of them. So in some cases, we've replaced the entire bridge, so it might be a whole new concrete bridge that was a timber bridge before. In some cases, we've renewed them, so we've rebuilt the timber bridge, basically renewed the whole thing in timber as best we can. So we've renewed that structure for the life of a new timber bridge again. And then others we've just strengthened, and we've been able to get away with not having to actually replace the timber so much, but even put laminated screen doors on them, and other methods to give strength to the existing girders and the existing components where they were slightly undersized. So the list there, and I've got a really give appreciation to our works engineer and people that look after this there. They've done a great job of getting work across the whole network. You can see there, we've done a lot of work to all those bridges that were likely to be load limited. We have a couple there that we can still then apply for future rounds of funding. So there's still some scope there. If there's some bridges that haven't been received anything, it's quite likely there are some that we have applied for funding and haven't been successful today in all of them. And they're probably the next candidates that will then apply for next rounds and look to renew or replace the entire network. So this report just gives an update of that status. I guess the other thing I'm looking at is just that we note the status of those load limits, and the implication there would be that we don't apply any more load limits, because Councillor Berry mentioned earlier that any of these things we apply onto our roads limits the supply line that how people can get produce out. What I'm also suggesting there that we agree to the removal of speed bumps on the approaches to bridges. So councils might recall we put a lot of speed bumps on bridges to slow people down when the bridges were at a quite stressful state. Because we have been able to strengthen a lot of the bridges, we could leave them there, but it's an impediment to the road users and nuisance. I think we need to try and justify why they're there. If we strengthen the bridges, people will be challenging, well, why do we still have to slow down? The next recommendation I've asked is that the council seek the advice of the local traffic committee to review the regulatory speeds that we place on bridges, with a replacement with an appropriate advisory speed on the selected remaining timber bridges where necessary. So at the moment, we actually applied a regulatory speed limit of 20 kilometres an hour. We have the speed signs that slow people down. And because they're regulatory speed, the police can basically go out there and enforce that at any time. It's quite anecdotal that people aren't all obeying those speed limits. They are going around the speed humps. They are probably going a bit faster than that. And I think that's where, through the advice of the traffic committee, we just need to apply limits that are practical. If we've done the bridge up and they can increase their speed, say 40 or 50 or even 60, then it's the road user sees that as an acceptable speed and they're prepared to do it. The application of an advisory speed would still seek to lower the speed limit down though, so that we still maintain that protection of that dynamic loading on the timber bridge. We don't want to have an open slab and just say, go as fast as you like and damage our bridges. The advisory speed still has that reminder that we have a narrow bridge or a timber bridge there and have an advisory speed to have the courtesy to reduce and slow the speed. And then that we just defer any further level 3 testing, which would involve having consultants come up and look at the remaining bridges. There'd be a fairly significant cost in that. I'm just suggesting that we defer any further level 3 testing until we've completed all of our current timber bridge replacements. So we do monitor the remaining bridges, but that just saves the council the expense. We're probably going to look to replace them already now.
Yep. Before I go to questions, Dave, I just want to where the speed bumps in, and the whole path. When those speed bumps have been taken out, I think it's great. It's only personal comments that the hot seal gets put in there. That's worked really well, I think. So it has some places. Sorry.
The asphalt?
Yeah. No, it's good. Just one on further walking bridge out here on the Bill River Road.
Part of that, what we're looking to do with the asphalt to actually correct the approach onto the bridge too. That some of them have a bump or have a onto the bridge. If we can iron out that approach onto the bridge, that helps that dynamic load of the bridge as well.
Councillors, questions today to do a report. I'll go to you, Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to David and Fiona and the whole team involved. I think we've been very, very successful in this term of council. First of all, we reacted to the problem, solved all the issues to date and still got more to go. I think from our council perspective, I think it has been most significant achievement of the whole term of this council.
Thank you, councillor. Any other questions to Dave or going to do a report, councillor Bromwich?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I just wanted to, the ongoing monitoring, that's via Ridge staff, isn't it?
That's correct, yeah. The ongoing monitoring will be done by our Ridge staff, and as we, even without any work or any further replacements, we will still inspect our roads and our bridges and monitor them. The level 3 would be the higher level dynamic assessment and full on top.
No, that's good. I just want to make sure we weren't in the previous position where we had actually broken bridges that no one had seen. Just on those approaches and that dynamic impact, that's the other day that the approach on the renewed Quigram and Willamimba bridges needs some fixing up because it now got a thing happening.
It's unconditional.
Yeah, and also on the Boundary Creek, I know it's a cement one, that's got the approach from the step up there too. It's just a coal. We usually prefer.
Any other questions, councillors? No other questions, reports here to receive and note, all in favour? Again, carried, thank you. Councillors, we'll do one more and we'll have a break up, yeah? Page 48, item E and B 7/21, Mulder's Creek Drains easement. Moving a second here, please. Councillor Murray, thank you. Second, please. Councillor Michael, thank you. So once again, I'll hand over to Dave, councillor, to present the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have councillors here a matter that has been to the floor in association with our cycleway land acquisition. This one is the installation of a pipeline. So in Molesworth Street, we have actually constructed a pipeline to eliminate a drainage concern. That pipeline goes halfway through the block as shown on the attached plans, and then it joins into another property, and then there's an open channel that covers along the next property. Those all the impacted properties by the open channel and the easement are owned by the one landowner. We have the proposed plan, the easement plan. What we need to do is obtain an easement over the pipe. We've never actually finalised that easement, which the pipe was put in through council public funding, so it's council's pipe. So we need to apply an easement so that we can get to it, maintain it, inspect it, and also to have it there so it's protected from any proposed building works, in case anybody wanted to do something over the top of the pipe. The easement plan also has one section there that identifies an easement along the western boundary of Lot 1. One of the concerns I raise is though that the issue that the whole drainage plan scheme was to address runoff from roof water coming off properties in Rouse Street. There's a number of properties there that already discharge onto that Lot 1. Now, the placement of the easement and the open drain requires their drainage discharge across Lot 1, across private property, which is not appropriate. Really, the easement needs to service the properties in Rouse Street. Because of the old nature of the expanded development of the properties in Rouse Street, there's not a lot of scope there for doing any work. They're built right to the boundary line. So the suggestion is that rather than create an easement where we're really encouraging the legal practice of discharging across private property, that we are in continuing with this action to complete the easement, that we relocate the easement to the eastern side of Lot 1. So that it does actually provide continuity directly from the properties in Rouse Street. So I guess the recommendation is that we note that proposed amendment to the stormwater easement, agree to the proposed stormwater easement being obtained, and then payment of any compensation of the affected landowner. It's really the landowner of all the property where the easement will be placed upon doesn't have any benefit from this easement at the moment. They may choose to do some sort of building work that might benefit, but at the moment they get no benefit whatsoever from the easement, and it would be an impediment upon their land. They wouldn't be able to build on that area where the easement's placed. That we fund the associated survey plan amendment and reasonable legal costs in obtaining the easement, and that we delegate the chief executive to negotiate any compensation amount once an independent valuation has been undertaken, and execute any of the associated documents to finalise the deal.
Thanks, Dave. Questions today to do with councillor Gromwood?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So that pipe is already in position.
The pipe is already in position within lot 4.
Right. My question is, what do the relevant businesses say when you advise them that they're currently illegally discharging stormwater across that block 1 after
Thank you, councillor. I've got to be honest, I haven't actually had any direct involvement or discussions with those businesses. This matter was actually first commenced, I think it was back in around 2010. That's when the pipe was done, and it actually was brought to our attention through the connectivity of the cycle plan. So we were the cycle pathway down.
Yeah.
So we had to continue with this action and complete it as a part of that agreement.
So if the pipe is where it is, those businesses at the northern end of that block, are they still discharging across portion 13? To the pipe?
At the
or is it-
northern end, yes, they would be, yeah.
And so by changing the easement on lot 1, you're not actually still having illegal discharge on portion 13 because our pipe is on the western side of the block.
That's correct, yeah.
So this doesn't resolve that.
The only option it gives them is to connect into the easement. It gives them an option where the pipeline at the moment joins, it just comes into that corner, the back corner of lot 1. It gives them the option, or council, if it wanted to extend the pipe further, it gives them the option to construct a pipe and drain it down from the outlet.
Thank you. Well, my suggestion is to either say no to the recommendation, or certainly have an easement just in where the pipe is, but I don't think we can set a precedent where we are paying for legal costs, compensation of land, surveying, all to an unknown amount to stop 5 businesses illegally discharging into the neighbouring property, let alone setting a precedent for the other 6 to the north and the others in the other 2 blocks either side, three blocks either side. So we could be the same way we weren't able to purchase that large block of land where we've currently got 26 cars parked and things, because of an unknown cost of legals and everything else, because of a previous agreement to other properties. This could end up costing way more than purchasing that block down. We don't know what this is going to come to, let alone once the businesses and the other businesses find out we're doing it for those 5, all the others will go, well, you can pay for ours too, in all the other blocks. So I would suggest we either defer this matter until all those businesses are approached as per the discussion at the workshop, and advise that they're currently illegally breaking the law by illegally discharging stormwater, and giving them the opportunity to work with council with this solution that Dave's put forward, at their cost, and talking to the pipe that we've already put in place, or otherwise I'm voting against.
Councillor, I'll come back to you because you've indicated you're quite entitled to do that. Dave, did you want to reply to any of those comments?
I mean, there's certainly merit in those comments, that it does set the precedent that we don't normally provide internal drainage for private properties. If it was benefiting the road drainage, or there was an issue of a council property, there would certainly be a benefit. The recommendation really does come from the original agreement following out from the cycle plan issue, the cycleway path issue. Again, it only addresses a couple of the residents, a couple of the businesses or buildings in Rouse Street. There are others that would have a similar issue, that we would have to then turn around and say, no, it's not our problem. So it does present a dilemma in that regard.
Councillor, you indicate you wish to do that way?
Well, I just suggest deferring until all the impacted businesses, including the ones to the north as well, are all advised that they're currently breaking the law through illegally discharging stormwater onto private property. Council has already drawn the plans up and given the opportunity.
You're referring to these plans that are in that document?
Yep. Well, yeah, but with the amended,
Yes.
it's got on the back of the easement moving to the east.
Yep.
Give them an opportunity to work with council, giving them a cheaper outcome, but it's their responsibility, not ours. And it sets a huge precedent of an unknown cost across the other, in a total 4 blocks of CBD businesses.
Councillor, trying to move on, so you want to move that way?
Can we just lay it on the table or do we just put a motion that says,
You want to defer it, a decision on it?
yeah, I'd like to defer this matter until all businesses are approached and advised of their responsibilities.
Probably if I just make a quick comment, just in regard to that, the principles there. I just wanted to warn councillors that in having that negotiation with those landowners, and there has been another property to the north there that had an order put on them by our planning department, so that's where it would go. It would go back to our planning department to have that discussion, put orders on them to correct the problem. But they would have to actually construct that extended pipe to make it work, so that actually, if we had the easement moved, there's still got to be the case of actually connecting the pipe there, to somehow make it all work. The other thing is we probably could get caught up in whether there'd be some cost to in legal searches of the actual technicalities. So it's not like it's just, we just say, oh, we'll probably walk away from it. There's more than likely going to be challenges where we might have to get a legal opinion as well. So that might be a cost, not so much to the engineering department, but our planners. It's just there for a portion.
Yeah, I've got.
Good advice.
I've got no problem with us putting an easement over the pipe, an easement from the pipe across to the back of those buildings to cover the work that we've already done that we weren't supposed to without having done this first, but not all this other additional work.
Well, Councillor Moffat, you've indicated you wish to move that,
Yeah, absolutely.
that be deferred.
Yes, that the matter be deferred until the businesses, the affected businesses are advised of their responsibilities regarding illegal discharge of stormwater and council's willingness to work with them to resolve the issue.
Yes, push Ken.
Can we just, in terms of that, until further discussions are had to establish roles and responsibilities, because I don't want to make any assumptions about the, about whether something's illegal or illegal question that's the same problem. Maybe for council.
Okay, so matter be deferred until the matter is.
Matter to be deferred
Until roles and responsibilities are determined.
Okay.
In relation to stormwater discharge.
In that particular area. One of the challenges with this report is also, as Dave said, is the age of this issue. And what I think David sort of tried to address in putting this report up at this point in time is the path of least cost, I guess, to get the matter resolved. So I completely understand where Councillor Petrie is coming from. However, obviously there are some requirements under compensation.
In that particular area, what did you put a specific location on?
To stormwater discharge.
Onto lot 1 and 13 or whatever.
Well, it can't be whatever.
Well, just onto land owned by the commercial hotel. I mean, depends how specific you want to be. And there's one affinity for.
I thought the same as you. Matter be deferred until the roles and responsibilities are determined in relation to stormwater discharge. Onto
lots 1 and 13.
Right. If I just go lots, then naming a business.
Yeah.
Okay. So Councillor Brougham, you happy with that?
Yep.
Okay, do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, and I'll take you as a second, Councillor Bob. Righto, Councillor Brougham, did you want to speak to that?
No, I said it.
Councillor Bob, in a second, you want to speak to it?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just briefly, I understand where Councillor Bronwyn Petrie is coming from. It might open a can of worms in effect. So,
Well,
and I think recently we've noticed a few things where historic issues have come up that have incurred council costs. And I think we need to understand each one of those as they arrive thoroughly. So deferring this, I think, would be a good idea. So that's all I've got.
Right, Councillor. Put up this is the motion to defer this item. So it's moved by Councillor Bronwyn, second by Councillor Bob Ryder. That the matter be deferred to the roles and responsibilities are determined in relation to stormwater discharge on lots 1 and 13. All in favour? Against? Carried. That is deferred. Got a motion to suspend standing orders. Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Sawyer. All in favour? Against, carried. We'll break for a little lunch. Welcome, Don. Orders, please. Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Second by Councillor Berry. All in favour? Again, carried. We're moving to page 51, councillors, in your hard copy. Item KB 29/21, your monthly operational report for March. So I'm moving to the second to deal with this, please. Councillor Michael, thank you. Second, please. Councillor Operational, thank you. And I'll hand over to you, Kyle.
Yes, so,
Give us in our monthly report.
thank you very much. So councillors, we've got the operational report for March 2021. This is the process having taken questions by exception. This will go to four.
Thanks, Paul. Questions to do with the report, councillors? Councillor Berry, I'll go to you first. I'll come back to you, Councillor Sawyer. Councillor Berry.
Page 22, research project planning.
I apologise, councillor. Can you say again what page?
Page 22,
Thank you.
second green dot, research project planning for the visitors of the future. Just wanted to do a further update to that call.
Green dot.
Yeah, second green dot.
So you're in operational, apologise.
It's 22.
Monthly report.
Yeah, monthly operational
report. What does it come under by? Does it come under by? Operational,
This page
yeah,
22,
but what,
tourism, I think, page
Yeah.
22,
this is the operational.
22, second green dot.
monthly
So the
operation.
research project ready for visitors of the future. That one, councillor?
Yeah, that's all. I just wanted to.
What was your question? Sorry.
I just wanted to, any further update on that? We had
Just
a,
order, please, councillors. Councillor Callaghan, please.
I just wondered if there's any further update or news on that one at all.
Not to the best of my knowledge, councillor, I think we're still waiting for the end date of the project. But I can certainly take that on notice.
Councillor, I think I did indicate, Councillor Berry, Councillor Sawyer, I'll come back to you, Councillor Ross. Councillor Sawyer.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you to the acting CEO. No particular page, just in regards to the DA process. What follow-up process do we have for DA approvals that have conditions attached to the Bull one where we'll have that road and we can construct it in 6 months and DA that had conditions attached? What is the process for the follow-up? Rather than wait 6 months and then, oh, they haven't done it or they have done it. I'll be monitoring to make sure we don't get to the end of the 6 months and we've got no further ahead, because my point of view is, which I outlined very clearly during this process, council staff work very diligently with the applicant to help them get the DA approved. I think now we have a responsibility to the people that objected to the process, that the conditions that were set on those approvals are followed through.
So with regard to that, what you mean is a follow-up with council and then the operational follow-up.
Just check if the conditions from memory were that they construct that new internal access road in 6 months and they do up that other road, that will extend within 6 months. So as far as I can recall, I think we've got 2 months done and dusted, got 4 to go. So I'm just wondering what the process is and to be sure that it does actually happen.
Basically, we have a red councillor, is that what you indicate?
So basically, my understanding, I don't know if I'm correctly, if I'm wrong, is that we've actually got essentially a spreadsheet, if that makes sense, of items that are needed to be followed up, so it becomes an operational item. The challenge that we do have of course, with that is depending on the numbers on the list and the number of people that we have as to how many we actually follow up. So the more developments that we have, the longer that list actually grows of the items we need to follow up, and the more staff time and resources taken to manage them.
I just think, given the people that are, number of people that were affected by this approval, 15, I think we have objection from. I think we have a responsibility for the organisation to not wait that 6 months, as I said, but be ticking off the boxes along the way. Have they told us where they're at? And keep talking to them to get it done.
I will go, sorry,
We are doing well, so Paul might like to make some comments.
Previously, and I'll discuss this with the planning
Thank you.
We are responding to ongoing inquiries on that.
Gary, want to comment?
Yeah, thanks. With me. I can actually say that they're actively engaging at the moment with the engineering department on the internal road and organising their approvals and getting their preliminaries in place.
Councillor Moore.
No, I'm sorry, I'll withdraw any interest in asking a question about that. I was just going to comment that I agree with councillor Sawyer because of the level of concern of some of these things. But no final approvals are issued anyway. Am I correct? Until all those things have been ticked off by council.
There is an approval process for the finalisation of the consent.
And all those things have to be completed. All those conditions have to be in place.
That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
That's conditional.
Yes.
To be compliant. So it's-
Yes, yes.
I'll
Thank
go to you, Councillor Murray, then to you, Councillor Bryant. Councillor Murray.
Through you, Mr Mayor.
Question to the monthly report.
To Councillor Sewer's remarks there. Are you talking about continual monitoring? Oh, sorry,
Councillor Sawyer, not Sewer.
I thought that's what I said.
No.
Forgive me if I don't speak proper English. Is it going to be an ongoing monitoring system that's going to go on, or?
This is what CE and Paul, you know, indicating where the, but this one, if we're referring to the one outstanding flat.
Yes.
That's what the staff are referring to now.
Oh.
So which is the management of ongoing issues and
Yep.
concerns with people who have raised objections, so we continually get back to them, obviously, and undertake enforcement of those activities. So some activities that are raised as concerns aren't necessarily part of the DA. Then there's the management of the development application process, and then there's the additional follow-up for continued compliance with the development. So there's sort of three pieces to that. Spreadsheet component concern or the operational oversight is to continue to check off that conditions have been met for the development application, and then there's obviously the ongoing of the compliance process that's put in place by the applicant to ensure that there is compliance with the
Got it. Thank you.
Councillor Broderick.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Page 139, I just want to congratulate Melissa Bloom for being one of the 3 finalists for the Young Water Person of the Year,
Well said.
Water Professional of the Year. But page 19, second last,
What page, Councillor?
19.
Yep.
And it's got lobby for improvement of telecommunications infrastructure through the Shire, da, 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 da. It's got nothing on, comments, but we did actually, I know, Mr. Ella did send away stuff to the government about different black spots that were of importance. So maybe we should make a comment there, something specific for our next round, so people can see that there has been some action, has been specific action.
take that one on those council. I have seen the letters obviously on now. Yeah, lobbying for black spot funds, so my apology for my side there.
Other questions to do with the monthly report, councillors? Councillor McNish.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Page 76, just about capital projects. Just a question to Kylie. Yeah, well, first, look, last workshop, we went to the Shire Charter Review Buildings and Administration Building. And it almost finished. There was one worker there, one carpenter who I know quite well. He was driving a vacuum. But I just wonder, is there any pressure in front of the builders to finish this? Like, Tenterfield has a reputation, start jobs, they go on, they sort of seem to drag on forever. I'm sure it's in everybody's interest here, especially the staff, to get into that building and get back into a sense of normality. Is there a final date on that party, or?
I'll hand that one
I've
over.
asked this question to you about 10 times.
I know, and I wish I could give you an answer. I'm still, we are still waiting. There's a series of things to follow, but we'll hand over to Paul because in his capacity as acting, he has been looking into this, and I understand some of the challenges, but I'll give him an opportunity to explain and share his thoughts. I still don't have a date. I'm happy to take that one on. I still don't have a date.
Thank you, and through Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's something that we're conscious of, and have, in fact, moved a couple of people back into the office and from HR, back in there. I'm hopeful that over the next month or so, we'll be able to bring more people back in.
Doesn't seem to be that much to do.
There's still a little bit of stuff we're waiting on, furniture and other things this week. I'm hoping in the next 3 or 4 weeks we'll be closer.
That's closer. 12 months.
One of the concerns, I guess, too, is defect rectification. So where we've actually ordered products and then relied not to our specification, and I know that that's a bit of a conversation. Now, if we in good faith order a particular product and it is considered to be something that needs, we are, I guess, trying to enforce our contractual rights there and make sure that we're.
Yeah, certainly it's a matter of frustration for staff and
It just seems dragging on forever.
Just didn't seem to be anybody there doing anything.
Well, that's the one bloke who got the vacuum cleaner. Mr. Mayor, may I continue?
Yeah, of course.
Another one's on page 109. Just a question probably with the owner about the light vehicle fleet. Tender is completed and submissions are currently being assessed. Were there many tenders received? None. One, okay, that's obviously from the existing one. Yeah, okay, yeah. That must be coming up fairly soon too.
Yes, it is.
The last one, Mr. Mayor, if I may continue. Just on the staff there, congratulations to Melissa and also to the young couple of years. Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. Someone said to me the other day, "Oh, I'm at the New Ranger." I said, "The New Ranger? Yeah, real nice bloke." Later, took the flagship girl in.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I felt a bit embarrassed because I didn't know what he was talking about. So, and I think back to Tom, I remember 2 earlier days on the council, when a new staff member came on, we were in the council chambers at a meeting say, "Oh, we'll meet such is the new ranger or the new office girl or the new engineer or whatever it happens to be." And then we'd know who they were. I know there's some privacy issues and things like that, but that might be a nice thing. This for the staff, and also going back a step further to the staff Christmas party. There's a bloke that wandered around like a sheep. I said to someone, "There's a fella. Oh, he's the new something or other in the office." I don't know who he was.
There's too many there, they're all confused.
Yeah, I think maybe the council's need to know who the staff are in this staff. So we can sort of say that and sort of make them wrong. Just something to think about probably the next council.
Certainly happy to take that on board
Yeah.
for the onboarding process. The current or the person who's filling in the job at the moment is Mr. Peter Muir, and that is not permanent.
It's still nice though, if it was.
I used to be having more.
Okay.
And you might know who you are, councillor, maybe not.
If you get in trouble with the Ranger council, you soon know who he is. Very officious, apparently.
Is he? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You must start off with you.
He has been, he was on and off through the petty part.
Please refer to mine.
And I suppose this one,
$591.
in terms of staff backfill, there will be obviously occasions where we can engage people in particular functions that may not be staff. I use the example of our food premises inspections and the like. That's not actually a staff member, that's somebody engaged to take that process. So you'll always get a few conversations about it in the Zoom, but I'll certainly talk to our manager of workforce and about, as part of our onboarding process, giving people the heads up on who they are.
And for us.
Yeah, no, fair point, councillor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. That's about all.
Councillor Drummond, this is second chair of this. Is any other councillors wish to ask a question? In fairness. Councillor Bob, this is your second go.
No, not in this, it's not.
Okay, VR, that's you.
Yeah, but you haven't
Oh, you withdrew, that's right.
yeah, so I want to talk about something else.
No, I'll go to you, councillor Bob, and you have a question to do with the monthly report?
Yes,
Right.
actually, it's a comment, seeing as we're in a mood to congratulate people. Page 19, which is about growth and tourism. Over time, I've been a bit concerned about this because I have an interest there, obviously. That a lot of these comments are just recycled month after month, or in that vein. Recently at the tourism meeting, I've got to congratulate the staff. I'd like to go on record and do that. They presented to us at that meeting. They did a fine job, and all that stuff, particularly the stuff about the advertising campaigns, the grant funding and where all the money's gone, is detailed in this report this time. And it's clear, and it reflects what we were presented recently at the meeting. So I'd like to say, Barry and his team, thank you.
Thanks, councillor. Councillor Bronwyn.
So just in following on to Mr. Della's response regarding the delay in the thing, I was just wondering how it went with the meeting with the insurance people about the roof repairs
Fair question.
a week ago.
Yep.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding is that some parts of the roof can be claimed by their insurance and some will have to. That's right. So, understanding some can.
Any other questions to do with the monthly report, councillors? Councillors, just before we do pass, I do commend you all. It just proves that how important their monthly report is. And once you put the questions that are asked, it's a very important document. I commend all the staff from all the departments who put the effort into updating and keeping their monthly report, because the councillors do read it. I think. All happy to receive and note the monthly operation report. All in favour? Against? Okay. Council, move on to page 52, GOV 3/21, all trial council, the 150-year celebration. Got move and second here, please. Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Second by Councillor Berry, and thank you. I'll hand over to you.
So council, or the mayor has received an invitation to attend the 150-year celebration for Forbes Shire Council. This event was actually postponed. So based on the policy at this point in time, it's prudent for council, I guess, to endorse his attendance at that celebration. Obviously, bring back a few bits and tips for our own I'll get that right again. Sesquicentenary celebration.
Thank you.
I think it's very simple.
One for the OTH.
Any questions or comments to deal with that report, councillors? Yes, councillor.
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor, considering that we're having one of these ourselves soon, and people will be invited in similar positions, that this is absolutely appropriate.
Thank you, and I will be bringing back a report on that to the subcommittee that's organised now. 150 years. Doing that, because I look forward to it.
Might get a few hints down there.
Hey.
You might get a few hints down there.
Well, that's what it's part of. It's a bit of a reconnaissance trip.
Say hello to me.
I will too. So councillors, all in favour to endorse? All in favour, against, carried, thank you. Councillor, page 54. It's item GV 35/21, it's the Southern Queensland Inland Northern Border Regional Water Alliance, Tenterfield Shire membership. Can I move a second to deal with this item, please? Councillor Berry, thank you. Second by Councillor Mike Rectory. No, thank you, and I'll hand over to Colin to present this report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So this report, I guess, is for council endorsing principle, Tenterfield Shire Council member of the Water Alliance, subject to the approval of the Constitution. So at this point in time, I did actually receive a copy of that Constitution first thing this morning, but I haven't had time to go through and obviously make any further, have any further thoughts on that at this point in time. The importance, I guess, is in terms of ongoing collaboration across border water security issues, and obviously also to return now and existing operational arrangements across the board. So it's very prudent that we endorse in principle council's membership of that proposed water alliance, but still in the formation stage.
and councillors, if I can speak, and with our wonderful relationship to be supportive of acting CEO's comments. It's, well, as mayor, it's, that we are supportive of our northern councils and what they're trying to do, because it's better in a room with a lot of like-minded people rather than trying to battle yourself. The main thing I'm involved with there is to be supportive of any water infrastructure improvements that we can do, and either this state or in Queensland, we're supportive of each other the way we should be. So it's a bigger picture deal, but it's a good group of people. Mayor Antonio, the Mayor of Toowoomba, will be presenting at our Rock meeting in the middle of next month at Stanthorpe, to give all our Rock group a heads up on this, and because he's keen on New South Wales councils that align with the board, whether they would also like to be involved with this organisation. So that's right, but that's basically where it's at. Obviously, if there's any financial contribution by councils with membership, that we know this decision made until it's approved by this council. And at the moment, it's just, as Kylie said, it's in its early days. So it is. Happy to, Kylie or Mel, I'm happy to take any questions. Councillor Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Mayor, I was wondering, the $20 million announcement for the pipeline from Toowoomba to Warwick is part of the rail tripping. How will that impact, we're considering also building the Warwick to Stanthorpe one?
Yeah, good question. I've got no idea, and I reckon they're the next gathering, and Paul will probably comment on that at the Brock meeting, but so, councillor. Yeah, no, good question.
So I know some of them eye off the proposed Mull River Dam as a way of getting water.
Yep.
I mean, they how big they think the Mull River is.
Yep.
But that's providing probably a more secure water source from the north.
Yep.
Even though Toowoomba, as we know, gets sort of heavy.
Yeah. No, I don't know, but anyway, we'll. Councillor.
Just like to comment on that, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
At one of our meetings here, I forget who they were, those people that had a look at Emu Swamp Dam.
Yep.
They were talking about water grids, and I just said that it's another part of the water grid deal.
Brent Finlay and.
Yeah, Brent Finlay and Lloyd Taylor.
Yeah, Lloyd Taylor.
And I just said that it's just part of the water grid, whether it comes from Ivanhoe. At the moment, Ivanhoe is sitting pretty low. So if the pipeline's constructed, there's no problem taking water from Mull River or wherever.
Council's there to do it all.
Yep.
And by being affiliated and a member of this, it just helps that you just need to be in a room and but anyway. Yes, council.
Except people have to realise it's the Mull River water is not new water, it's already allocated. So it's not a case of there's a dam, let's get the water, it is already allocated. If you want to access it, you'd have to buy it or have something changed in the New South Wales legislation.
Just on that, councillors, I will be presenting next Monday in Sydney. Holly and I are travelling down on Sunday to the wonderful review to do with water, to do with the dams. There's a subcommittee all led by the Greens, of course. Sorry to mention that, but they are. State government, and I was invited to go down and to present at that. So I've accepted that invitation, and we'll be appearing there. I get 3/4 of an hour, I think, Holly, no, again, with questions. And because it's just been a one-sided story, that's my personal view at the moment. And it's not only to do that, it's to do with water infrastructure also. We're meeting with Minister Pavey at 11 o'clock on Monday morning while we're down there. One, to thank her for the great support the state government has given us with our bores, with the funding of that. And the other thing, to raise a few questions about other things that we need to talk about. But I just can't think of at the moment. There's 2 or 3 dot points we'll be raising. And an invitation obviously to come up and open the boards. So that's, I do look forward to that, because this council has been supportive of the business case to do it in Mull River Dam. That's what I'll be speaking to. Any other questions, councillors? Yes, councillor Tom.
I don't know if it's the right place to bring this up, but NRA,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
As soon as they came out and looked at my dam and all this sort of stuff, and they approached me like I was a criminal, they got out of the car and said, anything you say or do may be taken down and writing and used against you at a later date. Well, that's a bit bloody ordinary. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just about to, but not. So I asked them why they're so aggressive.
Well, we will raise that, councillor, if you wish.
Yeah, well, I've got himself in all sorts of trouble. I get beaten up or shot like the last. The last bloke was aggressive. He wound up in the grave.
You did?
Yes.
Anyway. Well, that counts.
I'm doing something about it, I've got better not.
The officer's recommendations there, all happy to endorse, in favour, against, okay, thank you. Councillors, we'll move on to page 67 in your hard copy. Item TOB 31/21, operational plan. I've moved from the second to deal this item, please. Councillor Berry, I'll take you as the move, second, please. Councillor Brian Murray, as the seconder. And as always, welcome America, and I hand over to Eric to present the report.
The subject report is for council based on public exhibition, draft Sheffield Council operational plan 2021-2022 from 28 April 2021 to 25 May 2021. Council's delivery program 2017-2021 was extended to allow for the development of the operational plan 2021-22, following steps taken by the Office of Local Government in 2020 to address COVID-19 restrictions and their impact on the integrated planning and reporting process. Community engagement on the community strategic plan and development of the next program will commence following the 2021 local government election. The draft operational plan 2021-2022 details the actions and programs to be undertaken to support the community strategic plan. The draft operational plan will be placed on public exhibition on council's website for a period of 28 days for community review and comment. The draft operational plan will then be brought back to council for final review and adoption.
Thank you, Colin. Sorry, Erica. Any questions, Erica, to do the report, councillors? One thing I just want to note, and to your financial having a call. You can put in the report, councillors, outstanding effort that the financial team, Jess, that you've done to bring that budget back into a little bit of a surplus. I commend you. And I know you've done a lot of work there.
We've actually got a few points.
Yep, by all means.
So,
All means, Jess.
as you know, from the workshop a few weeks ago, we had a pretty significant deficit, which we gave you the list of the main contributing factors that added up to 1.66 million, such as the reduction in RTR funding and some additional costs that we had no control over. So if you look in the operating position forecast, which is on page 72 of the operational plan, we've now got a very, very small surplus under $2,000. So to put this again in context, like I said, we had $1.66 million of additional costs with the main items that we had no control over. And then a 2% rate increase is only equivalent to an additional $103,000. So obviously not to have much of an impact on those costs. Fortunately, following further discussions with managers, 2 one-off sources of additional income for next year have been identified. So first off, because of the introduction of the surveillance policy and the vehicle telemetry systems, the fleet manager has advised the council could claim the last 4 years of fuel tax credits, which is estimated to be around $600,000.
Oh, right.
So that was one of the big factors that's brought us back into a small surplus. And then the other is after conversations with the manager of assets and program planning, from that workshop, there is the potential for some asset sales, and so a notional figure of 500,000 one-off income was also added to the budget. And then also thanks to managers who did further use their departments and found some additional expenditure savings. So those 3 things combined is how we managed to get that number back to a small surplus. However, we still have the long-term problem that these one-off sources of income will help us next year. If you look again on that page 72, we can see the 4-year forecast. For the outer 3 years, we'll have still some pretty significant deficits forecast. And also, we just want to note regarding borrowings for next year, new loans on page 90 of the operational plan.
Yep.
So we outline there that we still need to take out loan funding for the proposed capital works program.
Yep.
So this is a $3.3 million for fund of the new landfill stage 5 in Excel, and also $2.604 $6.2 million for transport network and capital works. So all those loan repayments and interest wouldn't be affecting this current, this next financial year, they would take effect the year after. And we've also done a quick calculation of the debt service ratio with the current budget figures, so we're still well above the threshold at 2 times, so at the moment, with the draft figures, it's 5.7%. Still fine there.
So for every dollar we got borrowed, Jess, we've got $5 to repay.
577, yeah.
Thank you.
So that's in terms of the budget, and then just a couple of items in terms of the fees and charges, which are in that operational plan. So I think we discussed in the workshop that we started proposing no increase to the residential water consumption charges, and that the non-residential consumption charges will increase to match residential. And then there will also be a change for the non-residential water consumption to increase the threshold for the tiers, 800 kilolitres to 1,000 kilolitres. So that's for the yearly consumption amount. And then we've also added in just a comment on page 87 plan. That's regarding previously about the sewage discharge factor.
Yep.
So that current standard discharge factor is 0.95, so at the very top of page 87, there's a paragraph there.
Yep.
So we're planning to present a procedural policy at the May council meeting that would allow non-residential customers to apply for a variation of this rate. It says upon providing evidence by way of installing a Scrooge metering device to justify the reduction. So this would be in line with the New South Wales guidelines, which is the link that's in that document. So yeah, those are the main points. We just wanted to highlight for everyone what's changed since the last workshop on budget.
Yes, I apologise, I'll come to you, Councillor Berry. Just so I mean, note taking here. So who was the wonderful job you've done to pull that debt back for this current term? You mentioned the fuel rebate.
Yep.
It's over 4 years.
Yes, so we can claim back the past 4 years.
Okay.
It's basically the data that's gathered from this new telemetry system.
Yep.
Will allow the fleet manager to justify the data that he has from the previous years.
Yep.
And so he'll be able to claim back for that period.
Yep.
Which, yeah, from his calculations,
Okay.
it's about 600,000.
Oh, good, thank you. We'll go to you, Councillor Berry. You've indicated a question to the report.
Yeah, question to Paul, Jeff. With our borrowing, how do we allow or do for the increase in interest rates? Is it because we get fixed loans or fixed?
Yep.
So that's all taken care of the next whatever. till the loan expires.
Usually fixed 20 years, I think, most of what the council is taking up.
So I dare say we'd be paying a little bit higher interest rate, giving it that way rather than taking on a daily basis.
But still, through you, Mr. Mayor, given the current low interest rates, it's a good time to borrow.
Yeah.
Any other questions to do with the report? No other questions? There's no other questions, the report's there. Councillors, all in favour? Against? Carried. Councillors, move on to page 70. To do with item GOV 32/21, investigation report for alleged breaches of Tasmania Shire Council Code of Conduct. Councillor Brian Murray, I've moved to second to deal with this, please. Councillor Berry, thank you. Second, please. Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Once again, I'll hand over to Eric to present the report. Thank you, Eric.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor Bob.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, before we get into that, I have a question, if I may.
To do with what,
To
Councillor?
do with this, I just would like to know why we're not dealing with this in a confidential section of
Because
the.
the breaches were in the public meeting, so the report's handed back to council, it must be going to a public meeting.
I understand the Office for Local Government has advised that way, but it's advised. Does that mean we are locked into doing it that way legally?
Councillor, because I'll go back to the start. Now, I've got to move in a second to deal with the report. That's good. I've introduced Eric. Eric, would you like to answer that, the question from Councillor Owen?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to. The language where we say the guidance and advice from the Office of Local Government regarding the structure of the resolution in a matter of code of conduct breach is that it is published publicly, whether or not there is a majority positive vote by council or a majority negative vote, it's published, it's a public document. It's also been challenged in the Civil and Administrative Tribunal forum as well. So it's also legal precedence, and the advice from LG New South Wales, which conforms also with the advice that was provided back to the investigation consultant, is that this is a public record document. So it is open, it's published.
Have we got a response, councillor?
50%, Mr Mayor. Look, I understand the results need to be made public, but because there's probably going to be people speaking for or against or whatever this, I believe that part of it should be confidential.
No, it's not a debate, councillor. I'm sorry.
know that.
This is officer's recommendation, into to council, to investigate.
Okay.
So that's what I'm sorry, I sound short, I don't mean to be, but that's exactly what it is. So it is.
Okay.
Councillor, I will, if you're quite entitled, if you want to, move most of it goes into confidential, but then whether it gets support tonight, it's not. I'll just leave you sit on that for a bit. Councillor Forbes, we're dealing with the report, so are you along the same lines as Councillor Draven, or?
Yeah, yes, basically I am.
Right.
And the reason.
Being fair to you, councillors, because I've stopped a process of what we're doing to do with this report, but I'm going to hear from you, councillor.
Yes, because I referred to a situation back in, there's only 5 councillors who would be part of this. Was back in 2015, June, July.
Yes.
Where we had a confidential that resulted in a report against a certain councillor.
Yep.
For bringing the council into disrepute.
Yep.
Now, I understand that was all done in public, but supposedly the crime was committed in public. But the report that says it was presented in confidential. So I feel there's a little bit of a contradiction there, and I thought that this should be also in confidential as a result of the precedent that was experienced back in 2015.
Yep. Council, with the utmost respect to our staff member, Erica, who's done anything to do with the report with the help of other staff, and it's taken a lot of time. I feel the explanation that Erica has given is the explanation that we're going to read. Correct me if I'm wrong, Erica. That's from Officer Level.
Mr. Mayor, I can elaborate.
Yes, by all means.
We might, Erica,
Yes.
present the report, and then if there's conversations or whatever.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present an independent code of conduct investigation, outcomes and recommendations from O'Connor Marsden and Associates, OCN, to council related to allegations of breaches of council's code of conduct by Councillor Brian Murray in the course of council meetings on 24 June 2020 and 2 July 2020, and complaints up to 6 July 2020. In July 2020, council received 3 separate complaints alleging that Councillor Brian Murray had made inappropriate, false and defamatory comments in the course of council meetings held on 24 June 2020 and 2 July 2020 concerning a project being considered by council and the proponents behind the project. One of the proponents of the project further alleged Councillor Murray had inappropriately shared private commercial information with a member of the public. A further allegation by a complainant confirmed by Councillor Murray, in which Councillor Murray alleged that another councillor had inappropriately recorded discussions at a confidential session of a council meeting and provided the recorded information to one of the project proponents. On the investigation report findings, 5 allegations of Councillor Brian Murray breaching the code of conduct were sustained. 2 allegations of another councillor breaching the code of conduct were not sustained. The investigation report was provided to the Office of Local Government in January 2021 as required by the Code of Conduct and prior to the finalisation of the investigation report. The guidance of the Office of Local Government has been included in the final investigation report. The investigation report was also provided to LG New South Wales for review along with this council report. in response to councillor Forbes' query on whether or not the report itself should be public at this point. This goes back to the changes in the Code of Conduct in 2020 as directed by the Office of Local Government. So while allegations and complaints would have been made while Council's Code of Conduct 2018 was in play, it is the Code of Conduct 2020 that the Office of Local Government is applying, and LG New South Wales is also applying. And that is because there was a situation of which actually takes precedence. So that is why this is being published in the business papers.
Be aware, councillor, to help you with this conversation we're having, I respect it, that is a public document. Well, people already read that.
So through you, Ms. Mayor, the report, the recommendation and the confidential attachment are self-explanatory.
Yep.
It is recommended, if there is to be consideration and discussion on the matter, that the meeting be moved into a confidential session.
Councillor, which I accepted to Councillor Murray, tabled this morning, noted to delay, private and confidential covert, take notice, I wish to deal with this matter in writing, I do not give you and your organisation or any agents or representatives of permission to contact me by telephone, but should you do so, I must warn you that calls to be constitute harassment will be recorded or used as evidence, but I may take this as reported combative jurisdiction. One by Councillor Murray. That's been tabled. Any questions to Erica to do with the report? No questions, the report's there, councillors? All in favour of the report? Put your hand up, please. Against the report? Voting against? Report's approved. Move on to page 75. The item GOB 33/21, finance and accounts period in the 31st of March 2021. I'm moving the second to you, please. Councillor Dish, thank you. Second by Councillor Bronwyn, thank you. I'll hand over to Jess for the finance department. Thanks, Jess.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this report is the monthly finance and accounts report for the period ending 31st of March 2020. As of that date, our general bank account balance was 8.187 million, and the general trust was unchanged from the previous month, 313,266.50. We also had $7.37 million in term deposit investments. For the month of March, we had no water sessions, and for that month there were 44 applications for 603 certificates, which is 117 applications year to date compared to 40 for the year before. Any questions on that one?
Questions, suggestions, or reports? Just before we pass it to your morning, Steve, just thanks for getting us up to date with those 603 certificates. It's good stuff, and we need to know what's coming. So thank you. Reports and councils all happy to receive a note? Against? Carried. Page 79, councillors, it's item GOB 34/21, capital expenditure report as of 31st of March. I'll move in a second to here, please, and do this report. Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Second by Councillor Forbes, so thank you. And once again, I'll hand over to Jess to present this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is the capital expenditure report for the period ending 31st of March. So like normal, this is the A3 attachment with the capital expenditure table. Any questions on that?
Councillor Bronwyn?
Yes, on the first big page up the top, make it 145,000 for the street, the art sculptures along the creek. I just wonder if you've got any update on progress of the installation. And I've got one more regarding the Colorado.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I haven't got an update at this point in time. I don't know if Paul's heard anything other than the last report that went to council identifying the
No, I just interested in how they're going to physically do it.
Yeah.
The other one is on the last page of the big stuff up the top again. Contribution to Clarence River Bridge with Kyogle Shire, where they said it's 500,000, and I noticed that Fiona team revised that considerably, and they were to invoice the revised amount. They come good with that revised amount.
I haven't seen an invoice,
Clear with finance department, so. Maybe it's zero, that's zero. Thank you.
I'll follow that with the mayor, councillor, and I will, Danielle, because they're very appreciative of our support and tried to be naughty, so. we need to
And
take
you're
place.
also asking about the naming of food.
Yes. Any other questions, just to do that report, councillors? No? The report said, councillors, all happy to receive a note? Against, carried. Councillors, moving to page 81 in your hard copy, item 10/21. It's a report for the audit and risk committee, the meeting held the 10th of March. Moving to seconder here, please. Councillor Paul, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Waddle, thank you. And I'll hand over to Paul, no, to you, Paul.
As I said, probably Paul or yourself or councillor Bourne might like to use this, so I apologise also.
No, that's all.
This particular area of the audit in this committee. So maybe Paul, could you give an overview, perhaps?
Well, I've just got confidence how important the audit and risk committee is, being on no financial experience at all. I enjoy immensely sitting in those meetings because in the wonderful world we live in local government at the moment and see councils in all sorts of dire straits with their finances. I think it just justifies how important this committee is. It's open and transparent, and that you know, the questions that need to be asked by the people on that committee, that they're there, especially Peter and Jeff. So I think it's really, well, of course it is. You've got to have it.
Just for noting, I guess the figures there again, the next into audit task we're looking at on board. So currently engaging internal department to come and look at council's fraud controls.
Yep.
So that's happening at the moment. Also from the external audit, the external auditors are in at the moment doing the interim audit for council administration.
Any other questions, councillors?
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think we're very fortunate having those two external personnel.
Totally agree.
And Jeff, you know, they certainly bring a wealth of experience and knowledge, and they make things very, very clear, especially to somebody who doesn't have an accounting background. So, no, we're very, very fortunate having them oversight our books.
Questions to Paul, councillors? Councillor Bryan?
Page 85, the top, where Jeff King and Peter Shepard expressed concern that these two issues identified as our highest risk, which is public tree management and power loss at the depot, suggested that a more mature level of risk management needs to be developed. In other words, I presume they think that they really aren't the two highest risks being that we face as a council.
So you understand, yes, that was the general nature of the discussion, and council has the system. We also had staff issues there. So it's kind of.
Paul, I apologise, mate. Can you just speak up a bit?
Sorry.
I apologise.
Sorry. I'll start again. So yes, this was an issue that was raised at the meeting about risk management and the level of maturity of risk management. It's an area the council is addressing through the manager, HR, and also our health and safety officer. We're currently reviewing with staff all the risks, and I know it's really at the forefront of staff's mind to present at the next audit committee some more detailed and more accurate reflection of the council's risk priorities, risk areas, and certainly I tend to agree that these two risks are the highest risk of council. From my perspective, financial sustainability is the highest risk of council, but certainly it's something we're addressing and come back to and work on for the next board.
Thank you, Paul. Paul, some comment from our acting CEO.
I was just going to say, one of the challenges that we've got is changing our approach to risk across the organisation. That's why it takes a little bit longer. We're very good at identifying and managing hazards, which we can actually see from our work health and safety statistics. Part of it, I guess, this process of reviewing with all the managers to get them to actually divide their risk up into those strategic components, as Paul said, things like financial sustainability, legislative compliance, those types of issues which are higher on our enterprise risk profile. And the council is obviously interested in, but taking that through the operational risk level. So whilst it's nice if we're a bit further advanced, given all of the risks that we have actually faced and all the disasters, etc., that we're starting to get back on the and even be able to trying to address some of those challenges as we go forward.
Thanks, Paul. Reports there, councillors, all happy to receive a note. Favour, against, carried, thank you. Move on to page 27. Item RC 11/21 in your hard copy. Report from the Roads and Traffic Committee meeting held 8th of April. Being the chair of that, I'm happy to move that way. Second, please. Councillor Berry, thank you. Second. And once again, happy to take any questions, councillors. Councillor Bromley.
Yeah, page 91, I've got a few questions. The Silica Quarry/development, at the end of that paragraph said you made the comment that it's difficult to secure funding. My understanding of the Dow's Quarry is that they pay royalty to maintain that road.
Okay.
Yeah, and so there's the funding, or is that funding insufficient?
Charlie, do you want to make some comment on that?
I can. Yeah, the funding is insufficient for what actually needs to happen out on site. It does need, I think David had a kilometre or 2 kilometres of rehabilitation and heavy patching that he's trying to program in for not this next financial year, but possibly in the following 2. And that would be major rehabilitation and reconstruction of that section.
Councillor, you've got another question to do with the report.
Not with that particular paper.
No, well, I just want to comment on that, what I'm referring to, because you mentioned me. What I'm referring to there is, and I won't change, because of our support of, with the Silica Quarry, because of their ongoing work there and then the approval of that extension to deal with the DA, our council, the way I see it, and to add to the royalty that they're already paid towards that road, that we need to pursue funding now. It's funding from where the quarry goes on the Mount Lindsay in the town and Old Allendean Road, because access is not will won't shift, but I can see there's a bigger picture, and it adds to the argument to do with the application we've got into March for a roundabout on that Mount Lindsay Road, the Boundary Road, Old Allendean intersection, to continue to pursue funding to be supportive of that industry. Because we all know that section, yes, the Mount Lindsay is a narrow bit of road. So we need to be supporting, no different to, I refer to Councillor Berry, always been supportive of the horticulture up in that area and trying to improve our infrastructure. We need to improve that infrastructure to be supportive, not only that business, the bypass as an eastern entrance for the heavy vehicles. So it's one of those ongoing things that I won't shift away from until we get there.
No, I agree. My concern was that there's been some discussion that maybe that royalty being paid wasn't being used back on the road. That was my point.
It's not about, of course it is, not council. But councillor, can I refer, the royalty is 3 parts of bugger all, I can tell you now. If we're building roads, Dave, you want to comment on that?
I'm just going to briefly comment that the initial assessment I've done of the works required out there is in the order of probably $1.8 to $2 million just out there. So the royalty would be a contribution to that. We can use part of our maintenance money to try and funding too, but yeah, so it's a long project.
Yeah. But thanks for the question, councillor.
Then on page 92 and 93, 17 there about the motorcycle event at the Rocky River, and there was an incident involving a policeman. Just for people's knowledge, it was not an accident, it was actually a medical episode.
Oh, okay.
It was not, there was no accident, and the gentleman had to be flown away and put into a coma and all sorts of things, and it's my understanding still in hospital. So it's purely medical, nothing.
Thank you for that.
And on the number 6 on page 93, Riley Street load limit. It's got about the purpose of this blister, the last sentence in the normal type. is to slow vehicles down and is unsuitable to relocate. Should the blister even be there at all? And why can't you relocate it slightly to the east anyway, so that people can access that last block that's been sold?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's uncertain when there's a cost involved, and also if we do move it, we implicate another property. So it's one of those things that while it's there, it's serving a purpose. If we move it, it's going to affect another property. If we move it further, it'll affect another property. Nothing's impossible. We can certainly get money, and we can do anything. I suppose, there'll be an impact somewhere. We are looking to look at an overall concept, so we haven't finished with that whole issue. We are looking to develop a whole concept of that whole section of road, and dealing with the blister and the load limit. One of the other issues, obviously, is that there is a 3-ton load limit, and that's been subject to complaints from residents there. So we are actively looking into that, and that's the purpose of blisters, to slow traffic and avoid larger vehicles being able to easily access the road. So it will be an ongoing investigation.
And you've shared that with the Wendy, right? Councillor?
But some vehicles have a permit to enter, such as delivery vehicles and things like that, don't they? But the other thing is, and we've raised it before, it's the only street in town that a truck isn't allowed to go onto. And we know it was originally put there at the request of a person who subdivided a block of land there. So my question would be, and there were also reports 18 months ago or something where there was even talk of turning it into a cul-de-sac, not let anyone up there, which would impact on emergency vehicles, etc. My question, as I said before, is why? Why do we have one street with no trucks when semi-trailers can drive down every other street in town?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they're the issues that we're looking at. We want to go back to include the original concept, which was to close the road off after the subdivision was built. We want to encourage the heavy vehicles to use the main access Western Highway. Wherever possible, we really want to encourage we want to encourage heavy vehicles and delivery vehicles to use the highway. That's the state road. While they're coming up back streets, they're deteriorating our own local road assets. Good point, still has to pay for. Whereas if they're accessing off the highway, which they should do, it's the state's responsibility to maintain. So there's all those issues as well as safety. There are some vehicles like our garbage trucks have permits to go down there to obviously collect the garbage, and you can actually come up there and make a delivery. Those residents aren't avoid getting deliveries, but it's the through thoroughfare that we're trying to avoid. So they're the issues that we're going to be looking at with the overall concept of that street that traffic committee's dealing with. Yeah.
And with just to add on to that, we all know with the great success we've had with selling all the lots of industrial estate, that the issues aren't going to increase because of this industrial estate, there will be heavy vehicles. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Perry.
Yeah, just, it's not so much about the report here, but about parking. This morning I went past the southern car park of the council chambers. It was chock-a-block full. Are we that short of car parks in town or?
Hey, yeah, I can answer that, yes.
Yeah, so they filled that up, so. Is it because the northern car park can't be used at all?
Oh, I think the northern car park gets used. No reason why it can't be used.
Yeah, I've been there a couple of
times. It's a bit sexier than the other thing.
Yeah, must be the southern one that's the tick at the moment.
David?
That's one of the other articles that we are looking at through the traffic committee, is to come back with an overall plan of what's there, a more detailed plan. Particularly, we've got some issues with disabled parking and loading bays for short-term drop-offs. So, yeah, there could be some implication with the building works on the northern car park in that area, but we are aware of anecdotal pressures on parking all through the CBD. So we are looking at a plan to review the entire CBD parking area and hopefully improve the accessibility of some of those other areas.
Any other questions to deal with the report? Before we move the report, I just want to speak on page 94, just to deal with the appearance of the highway. It's just on the southern side. Councillor Murray, you chair of the Parks and Garden, I will be going there and get that on your business paper. Right. To raise it with Parks and Garden, and see if they will support that.
Right.
Not at the cost of Open Council, we need to work with Transport New South Wales, see if they're keen on funding that, looks a bit sad, no love. You all know what I'm talking about? The trees just on the southern side, on the highway, going up Chipping Street.
Yes, I'm aware.
Yeah. I think, whatever, the early days, probably stand in front of your place or up from your yards, John.
Yeah,
Playing right in the old road too.
actually, I was gonna say the very hardy trees.
Yeah, but
Still a hole in the old pitch.
Yeah, but my view is that it just, we can somehow get it tidied up and get it maintained, and we've got all that good loamy soil from the dam when we've done that excavation, and I think we, just to pursue that, so we can get a bit of funding through, what they allow us to, because their road, the New South Wales government. To be supportive of that appearance, of that entrance in the town.
Love to see the love crowds still over there.
It's coming out of your place.
I know, it's good.
That's why I raised that, so I'll get it on your next meeting, councillor.
Thanks.
Right. Any other questions, councillors? All not the reports there, all happy to receive a note, all in favour, and carried. Move on to page 95, it's RC 1221, report to do with Burrandarran Association Incorporated. Councillor Sawyer, you being a lead, you happy to move that one? Moved by Councillor Sawyer, second please. Councillor Walker, thank you. Councillor Sawyer, do you wish to speak to the report?
Not unless there's any questions.
Any questions to do with the report, Councillor Sawyer? Report said council, all happy to receive a note. Over, against, carried. 101, in your hard copy, councillors, it's item RES3, stage 21. Council resolution registered for April, probably move the second to deal with this report, please. Councillor Michael Creepy, second, please. Councillor Bob Rogan, I'll take you to second. And I'll hand over to acting CEO, Kylie, to present.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Happy to take any questions like that.
Any questions, councillor, to do with the resolution register? Councillor Berry?
Page 10, is there any update on the Office for Local Government about the no kick? I better find it. It was about the road naming it up around Leeston, a couple of roads, Kyle, I just on the right page.
Councillor, what was it to do with road naming?
Yeah.
I don't know, Dan might be able to.
Probably, council, I think it's still an active item, we haven't forgotten about it. There is also the item of thinking of a name for Park and Western. So, the naming of items, we've got that part of it, it's a policy that we're looking to review. And it's also then tied up in our changes to the road asset management plan. So some of those policies have been combined into the road asset management plan. It's still there that we will consider them. We haven't actually acted on them until there's any significant changes to the plan. They're still there that we'll consider them. After the road asset management plan is adopted by council, the resulting policies that are affected by that change will then be put up for review in the budget.
And
Okay.
There's been one more name that's been given to me that we should be naming is the town water supply dam. We should be looking at a name for that.
Good point.
So would that go through the same process though?
I was just going to make a comment on the road naming, and that there is a consideration that we might actually make it a public asset naming policy rather than just roads, which would mean parks.
Yeah, I agree.
Public asset.
Was Richard being the truth now?
Yeah, so they all go under the geographical name for process management.
There is a section in the road asset plan where we referred to that with suggestions of making trees and species of the native trees and gems, depending on the area that it represents. So again, that's if the community or councillors want to make suggestions, that we have a list there of names to select from the future. That's where that can be submitted to.
Good. Any other questions to do with their council resolution, council Bob, I apologise, council next.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just on page 16, the notice of motion of the Maryland Collingville Road I guess.
15
start.
and 16, councillor.
Page 16, yes.
16.
It's about the Maryland Collinville Road saga that's been going on for a while.
Yep.
The latest and very recent is National Parks. The items in red there at the bottom have confirmed that gazettal documents have been withdrawn from the Minister's office, and they've got a meeting to be organised between them and Tenterfield Shire Council. So the question, I guess, would be to Kylie about, I guess, where we're at with that. And I didn't realise that gazettal documents, what are they talking about? Who gazetted what? And any meeting with National Parks, does that mean that there's a likelihood of National Parks are still going to have input into, I guess, the management of that road in the end? Or what's happening there?
One of the questions I think that feel free to jump in here at any time is that the road reserve is currently not, through the national park is currently not
Aligned,
with
yes.
information, and National Parks group back to us and said basically that they're happy to withdraw the at this point in time. It's probably to use the actual road corridor itself. So we've got a conversation coming up to discuss some of their concerns, I guess, in and around the ongoing management of the park, ability to use the tracking use, I guess, at this point in time. So it's spent on a cruise meeting with National Parks representatives to go through the concerns that were raised in that correspondence, where they've advised us that they're actually withdrawing the gazelle at this point. So it's a half audit, if that makes sense. So they've withdrawn the gazelle of the road and to resume it. However, they've raised concerns with us using the tracking use at this point.
Okay, well, just to sort of another part of the question to yourself or to Fiona or whoever, I would have thought that the historic use of the road currently where it is would constitute that, you know, it reverts to being in that place instead of its original place on the map. And would we push for that to be the case or what? If that makes sense.
Realign the road reserves so it's sitting on top of the tracking use.
Sorry?
To realign the road reserves so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
on the tracking use.
What you said.
That's one of their conditions.
Okay.
And they're also asking for a commitment for the ongoing road maintenance. Because the whole idea going back in the years and was that National Parks were wanting it to be handed over to them so that they could actually just take care of all the maintenance themselves. So in us trying to withdraw that or having withdrawn that gazettal, that's the commitment they're asking. The conditions they're asking for is the commitment for maintenance and the commitment that we will actually to make that transition process.
Okay, I assume that the, you know, I don't know, whatever the term is, there would be some cost involved with the legal implications of realigning it to the track that's currently being used. But the level of maintenance that council would determine is needed, how would that be determined? Because what our committee recommends, the tourist committee, that it gets hardly no, it's the way it is now is the way it should be for tourism purposes.
And I believe that Dave, in the road network management plan, road asset management plan, has classes in an E-class, so on a risk basis.
I was just going to mention that we haven't actually included Maryland Collinville in the actual register at this stage because it's still a matter of
Understand.
It is in the report. It is referenced as an active case. So depending on council's actions with that item, it would most likely go in as New Parks Road.
So that's the lowest designation we've got anyway.
It would be the lowest destination. We did consider though that there'd be implications which we think we would cover with an E-class road anyhow, but we would have to meet at least the minimum standard required by the emergency service. It's a rural fire service, but they already have a standard, you know, a track, so we'd be looking for at least that, if not better, with our E-class.
Okay.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks.
Thank you, councillor. Right, councillor Whitebeck, you've indicated.
Yeah, I just only got a few comments I wanted to make out. I noticed the Peter Allen Festival Committee thing's been fixed up and paid, which is about time. And on the sale yards out there, the ramp and the truck wash, it's been on the books now for about 6 or 7 years, and everyone's still talking about it. And wonder if any action is going to be taken about doing it.
Well, I think David, I think to do with the loading ramp, I think, were we going to costings for that?
Yeah, we're looking to go to costings and get some costings on it. We've also still got to finalise the development application since we split the development application. So we took the truck wash component out of it to get across the line with the loading ramp. But we're still actively looking at the truck wash at a possible site next to the amenities building at the top there. So we're still we've got to get some action on. Apologize on that. We've got to get some action on finalising the detail and the plans and what we can do for the costing for the truck wash, and then submit a separate development application for that. We still haven't got a final costing on whether we can afford to put the roof on and that sort of thing. What we're looking to do is see if we can find reasons why we don't have to put go to the extreme of the cost of roofing it, because we want to still keep it under that $1.2 million budget.
Yeah, but
the loading ramp, we're looking to try and finalise the development application for that and get the costings of it, so we can get some action on that. So,
that loading ramp, I thought it was designed there 4 years ago. They're going to pace them up the hill there. I thought they had all the design made up for it. Like fair enough, the truck wash, but I don't see any other truck wash around in my travels around any sale yards where they've got a big roof over a truck wash. They don't get the drivers bloody wet when they're washing the truck down. I never seen it, heard anything so ridiculous having a roof over a truck wash. I think we should get on with this job and get the double decker ramp in and get a bit of action going there. There's no good sitting there with it on the books and talking for another 5 years about it, because I probably won't be here after next September. You know, it's just one thing, it's just been there too long. I think it wants just doing this. And another one I had on my mind was that band hall going to shift out there. How much is the council going to allow to shift that?
Well, in the resolution that went through council was $50,000.
Yeah, what happens if it goes over?
No.
It's about 80,000.
No, that's it. That's what council corrected for wrong. That's in the resolution.
The budget allocation is supposed to work with the Progress Association and provide them with that.
They'll have to fund the rest.
Yeah. And they have councillor Michael, like speaking our term, and he's in on this footpath conversations with the people there that they have been away and had 3 quotes to do such a thing. Still way above the 51s under. So, but they're stealing the staff's fund. They're dealing with the staff as they need to, and in a very positive way.
Mm-hmm. And another thing I noticed in the register, that paddock out there near the mill, never got any inquiries for that, no tenders in for it.
No, we haven't. So we just re-advertised benefits recently for extension. So staff are sort of going and liaising with the existing standards.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So
That's
we
all I had.
advertised it as we're required to do. Everybody's had the opportunity to request the use of that.
Fair enough. That's all I had.
Thanks, councillor. Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering with regard to the sculpture wall on page 32, it's got a comment there awaiting confirmation on native title. It's been sculpture.
Sculptures on the footpath.
My understanding, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that they're still waiting on some advice on whether or not, given that Crown Street Park is an involved piece of Crown land, whether or not that is subject and whether we need to make a notification. So there's still some issues around how we go forward with improvements on any asset within that park, and it relates to a couple of other proposals, I guess, that they've got in the lead as well.
Even though the band hall is on that parcel of land, therefore under the native title rules of.
Not quite. There is a separate piece of land. So there is a tiny, as you may remember, there's actually a tiny piece of land that particular asset sits within.
Right, and it also came up in one of the road things up north where about vegetation removal, I can't think of the name, but that there might have been an issue there with that. No, it wasn't the view. It was in. But there's also my understanding that a road reserve has no title extinguished, but adjacent Crown land like TSRs beyond the road reserve do. So were we talking about removing vegetation or a separate piece of land or nothing else?
I've already covered the, in one of the survey submissions that we received, the road asset management plan, they were referring to a local road just north of Tenterfield. But it was one where it was total road reserve, so it wasn't a ground or traffic stop reserve issue. But it's, I think the comments were more general that, you know, the council should be doing more maintenance of our own road reserves and maintenance of vegetation.
My other comment was, go to Bob's query about the Cullenor Road. And National Parks have written back. My own personal view is that enclosed lands thing should apply, and if national parks do want to pursue that, then every other national park where they access through private land that is not on the road reserve, then they should do exactly the same thing. If they're expecting council to pay to realign that road, then it works the other way around too, and they just might get a bit of a shock when they see where they're currently driving to access their parks.
Any other questions, councillors, to do with the report? No? All happy to proceed and note? Favour? Councillors, that's the end of our reports from delegates and committees. There is no notice of motions. Resolution register has been done. There's no confidential business. So with that, councillors, I will close this meeting. Thank you all very much for your attendance. The meeting is ended. Please come. I wish you well.
Do you have any instructions?